over 3 billion pounds of beef was imported into the U.S. in 2023. That's a lot of meat. It can be born, raised, and harvested anywhere in the world and get shipped into the United States. As long as it goes into a USDA facility and gets repackaged, they can get an American flag sticker put on it and say, product of USA. When we started learning these things, we kind of drew a line in the sand, said we're only going to source domestically, and we're only going to source that we know is clean. Honestly, that was a big game changer for us.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Lila Rose podcast. Did you know that more people are consuming meat than ever before? Despite the push by maybe the vegetarian or the vegan movements, people are actually valuing meat more than ever in 2024. And the trends show that the meat industry is growing rapidly as well. Today, we're going to talk to Ben and Corley Spell of Good Ranchers. We've talked about them on the podcast before, but to really unpack their meat packing company, their meat distribution company, and how they're sourcing all of their products from American ranchers. Good Ranchers is one of the fastest growing meat companies in the United States. They've been growing rapidly, and the demand for meat continues to go up. So if you're a meat lover, you're maybe on a carnivore diet, this will be fascinating for you. And if you're meat skeptical, you'd want to hear about the origins of this company and also why they feel so strongly about the importance of sourcing products like meat in the United States. This is not to say global trade isn't good and it's not good to trade with our neighbors, but it's important to have a food supply that is local and that you know where your food's coming from. So Ben and Corley Spell, they started their life as a youth pastor family. They were involved actually in ministry at the church level. They did not think they'd get into business or certainly not into meat packing and distribution, but this is their unlikely story and how they have become one of the fastest growing companies in the United States. A big thank you to Good Ranchers. This is a pro-life, pro-family company. They are a sponsor of this podcast. They're also just amazing people that run a great business. And so thank you to Good Ranchers for sponsoring the episode. And thank you to Good Ranchers for sending me and my husband some great meat. If you go to goodranchers.com today for the month of February, you can get 10% off your order using the code Lila at checkout. That's ordering American meat delivered at goodranchers.com, delivered directly to your door from American Ranchers, and use the code Lila at checkout for 10% off your order. Ben and Corley Spell, thanks so much for joining the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, so glad to be here.
So our audience already knows about Good Ranchers because we've been talking about it, and I know a lot of them love it. Our family loves Good Ranchers, but there's so much to the Good Ranchers story and to you guys and your personal story. So I'm really excited to get into that today.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So the first thing, though, is, starting Good Ranchers is, let's start with that because people want to hear the backstory. It's a pretty unique backstory. When I first started, I was like, wow, there's something, God is doing something special with this company. Yeah. So I'd love to hear what inspired you to start Good Ranchers, especially coming from a pastor ministry background, not business, and totally feeling led to start one of the fastest growing, small, locally sourced meat companies in the country.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having us on. We love what you do and love what you stand for, and we're happy to be here. So, prior to Good Ranchers, I was a worship pastor. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's the guy who's playing the guitar and singing. And I worked for a large church in Houston, and I ran like the whole. When I say large, everything's bigger in Texas, so it's like a 15,000 member church, and so
that's small in Texas, right?
Exactly. And so I ran the entire music production department, and so that's what I did from the time I was a teenager all the way into my mid-30s, and I started praying and asking God to give me something. This wasn't a term back then, but I was praying for a side hustle because I didn't like that all of my finances were paid by the church. And so I started praying and asking God to open a door for me, open an opportunity for me. And he started giving me this idea of a meat company. And like it was never, ever, the first time I had the idea, there was not a chance that was for me. And I remember telling Corley, like, hey, somebody should do this, 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 and this. And there was not even a drop in the bucket of a thought that we were the ones to do it. A few months go by, and I would have the idea again. About every 3 months for about a year, I would have these thoughts. And it's funny because hindsight's 2020. I was praying and asking God to give me a side something else that I could do. and he keeps dropping these meat company ideas and in my head, and I'm just completely oblivious, as men can be accused of being sometimes, and just completely oblivious that this is for us. And every 3 or 4 months I would talk to Corley about it, but it was always someone else should do this. It was never that. And then never for us. And one morning I was getting ready. It was a Sunday, and I was getting ready to go to church, and I was just getting ready, and all of a sudden I started thinking of the meat company again, and I clearly heard God's voice. I mean, it shook me, and he said, "You do it."
Wow.
And it was like thunderous in my head, and I came out of the bathroom, I think like I saw a ghost, because she, I think she could tell the sobriety I had when I came to her, and I said, "God just told me to start a meat company." And thinking she was going to give me all the reasons why, because we had never talked about us doing that. It was just really a very ancillary thing that we would mention and then move on. When I said that to her, she said, "If you heard God, then I trust you."
Wow.
And that was amazing in and of itself, like because if your wife believes in you, if your wife doesn't believe in you, like that's a really hard, that's a very hard thing. But when your wife does believe in you and has your back, for at least for me, I mean, I feel like I could do anything if I have Corley's support, and for her to just say, "I support you, I trust you, I'm in this with you." And because we had just had our first baby boy, we didn't have any money in savings, hardly.
No monies.
Yeah, and so we only know one way to do things, and that's kind of go all in. So that was like in December of 2017. I resigned in January. I resigned actually in December, starting as January, and filed an LLC, started figuring out where can I buy some meat, and just a few, like maybe 10 weeks later, I was selling meat out of the back of a truck in a parking lot in Waco, Texas. That's how we started Good Ranchers. But God is faithful, and when God is in something, He's in something. And we've worked very hard, and we've been diligent to be good stewards of what God has given us. But it's never really been hard. Hasn't been easy, but it's never really been hard because God truly has gone before us every step of the way. I mean, our first year, we were successful and we were profitable, which is just
wow.
I know. And
so I want to stop there for a second, because you're thinking for a year at meat.
Mm-hmm.
Why? And what was the inspiration for the meat company? And then what would you discover as you were starting Good Ranchers about the state of the meat industry in America and the need for Good Ranchers?
Yeah. So do you want to answer that one?
Well, I think part of it for me, just, having your first baby or just being pregnant leading up to the baby, that whole time you're thinking about what's going to be best for the baby, what's going to be best for me, our health. And so I think for me personally, that's whenever I started diving into what are we eating, where is it coming from, what's the source, and kind of asking those questions. And we did it together. And so just having that going on, and then, you doing your own research and stuff, I feel like that led to like the meat. It's like, well, where's this meat coming from at the grocery store? It says this, but like, is it really from there?
As we started, when we first started, full transparency, those first couple years, we didn't have any buying power. We were just buying from brokers. We didn't know what we didn't know. And but as we began to get some buying power and started buying more, or some purchasing power, buying more and more, we started to be able to cut out middlemen and brokers and layers and get straight to some producers. And that's when we realized, it wasn't until 2019, toward the end of 2019, that we realized there's no country of origin labeling law for beef or pork in the U.S. And that prior to 2015, there's always been country of origin labeling law, like
wow,
on everything, and there still is for vegetables and produce and
T-shirts.
Yeah,
why not meat?
Right,
exactly. But for beef and pork, there's no country of origin labeling law. as long as it can be born, raised, and harvested anywhere in the world and come into get shipped into the United States. As long as it goes into a USDA facility and gets repackaged, it can get an American flag sticker put on it and say "Product of USA." Really
Do they
big.
test it? Is there testing that they have to do?
What do you mean by testing?
Like when the meat comes in, I mean, what are the standards even for the meat, if any? Like,
yeah, I mean they're gonna test it for E. coli. They're gonna like those things,
Sure.
but it's.
But you don't know how it was raised.
You don't
know how
know what's raised. Yeah, they don't. They're not testing for like hormonal use, antibiotic use. Like they're not testing for any of those things. And fun fact, if you look at all of the cases of E. coli in the last, go back however many years, 9 out of 10 of them, and that's a pretty safe number. Almost all of them are from imported meat.
wow. Well, what I've said on the show before, people listening who have heard me talk about Good Ranchers, it is the best beef and chicken that my husband and I have had, compared to anything from the grocery store.
Sure.
Because when we get from the grocery store, and, not to like throw out another name, but like Costco, I love Costco. I'm a fan. I'm a mom. I go to Costco.
Yeah.
But, even that, and you feel like you've got good products at Costco, the chicken just doesn't compare to the Good Ranchers chicken. It just tastes, it's not that stringy, dry, separated taste. And then the meat is just awesome. So walk us through now where you are. This is you're 5 years into the company?
Yeah, we're going into 6. Yeah, last year was our 5th year.
So you said at first you were just starting, you're not really familiar with the environment, but what does it mean when you say like the meat comes from an American?
Right. So first and
ranch.
foremost, almost everything that you're buying in the grocery store, so much of it, so 3 billion pounds, over 3 billion pounds of beef was imported into the U.S. in 2023.
Wow.
That's a lot of meat. So much meat in the grocery store is coming from feedlots in Mexico, coming from South America, coming from lots of different places, and again, it's especially even places like Costco, which you think are so great.
It is great.
for certain
The dried mango
things.
bags.
Yeah,
So good.
for certain things. But at the end of the day, beef, chicken, the meat aisle is a commodity in the U.S. and across the world. It is a commodity, and the grocery stores, even Costco's, even your Whole Foods, like all of the grocery stores, they've just commoditized it. Even like that's the reason you say that the chicken is such a difference. Like organic has become there's so much greenwashing, even especially in the organic label for chicken.
What does that mean, greenwashing?
It means saying fancy things, to like putting a fancy claim out there that absolutely means nothing
to that specific product. So to be organic for like fruits and vegetables is important because those are sprayed with all the things. But for meat, for chicken specifically, it has like
they realized as long as we can. It can be free-range organic chickens, and we can, as long as we give them access to outside, so they're still
Right.
be in cages all day long and as long as we give them organic feed, which they've turned that we figured out how to just make organic pellets and feed them organic feed. They really can never go outside, but they had access to outside, so it can still be labeled as organic.
Yeah.
The same thing is very true even with grass-fed and things like that. Like again, the large corporations out there, they want to make as much money as they can because that's on one part that's capitalism. But as soon as they realize, okay, well, this is what the consumer wants. How can I do this? How can I skate the line as close as possible? Give them what they're asking for, but still make as much profit. So even with grass-fed, they figured out, okay, well, we can turn grass into pellets, and we can, there's different types of grasses, there's different types of things, and we can still feedlot beef and feed them grass pellets, and now it's grass-fed beef. Like there's so many ways around all these things. And then other things. For the sake of time, I'll just stop there. We could keep going down the list of claims and things. Just but when we started learning these things, we said, okay, well, we care about what we eat. We care about what we bring into our home. So what we kind of drew a line in the sand right at the beginning of going into year 3, going into 2020. We drew a line in the sand and said we're only going to source domestically because prior to that's when we learned, okay, a lot of what we were buying was coming from Mexico, was coming from South America, was coming from other parts of the world. And we said we're only going to source domestically, and we're only going to source that we know is clean. We don't want antibiotics in our food. We don't want added hormones in our food. And we want to know how the animals are being raised. And so we made that decision in going into 2020, and that was a big game changer for us. And we did it for the health reasons initially. We didn't realize that it actually tasted better, and but as we started getting into it, like we realized, wow, like what we're selling is so much better than the grocery store. And people, like what you said, people say it all the time. They go, man, your beef is really good, but what do you do to the chicken? And it's like, we don't really.
Well, that's the thing.
We don't do anything to the chicken. That's just what
It's
chicken's supposed to
chicken,
taste like. Yeah, it's
Cluck it around.
yeah, and so and now we have pork and wild caught seafood as well now. So which again all adheres to the same standards. And but yeah, we believe that you are what you eat. And what you put into your body is what you're going to get out of your body. And people care way more about the type of fuel they put in their car, and they should be looking at the type of fuel they're putting into their body.
100%.
All right, so maybe part of your 2024 resolution is to eat healthier, and for you, that's the carnivore diet. What about your skin? How do you do healthier and better skincare? Well, that's why I have loved discovering NimiSkincare.com. I've been using them faithfully the last 6 months, and Nimi Skincare is an amazing product. Nimi Skincare is packed with proven ingredients that work. I love using their deep hydration cream. I also have their sunscreen on right now and like using their vitamin C scrub. They have really great products in line for really any age and any kind of skin that you might have. Check them out today at NimiSkincare.com. You'll also love that this is a company that not only has great ingredients and great products, but they support your values. It's a pro-life, pro-family company. So check out NimiSkincare.com today. You can use the code Lila at checkout for 15% off your order. Let me know what you think. I've loved using them. That's NimiSkincare.com, and it's 15% off your order with the code Lila.
So one of the things that I really like about Good Ranchers is that there's a sense, I mean, again, people who listen to the podcast are really, I think, educated on, some of the kind of globalization trends that are happening. And, we are so reliant on other countries for a lot of necessities as a nation. So I think there's a concern about even just security, like know where your food is from, know your local farmer. In your case, know your local rancher. And I think there's so much power in understanding where your food is from, and there's security to that. And there's also just building community to that. Yeah. Not to say that trade is bad or that we don't want to do trade with other countries. That's all can be great. But tell me about your perspective on that and your journey has been with Good Ranchers, because, again, so much of our food supply, even as a country, is outsourced, but the small family farm or ranch hasn't necessarily gotten the support historically, at least in recent years, that it needs compared to the big corporations, and how Good Ranchers is really disrupting that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've been kind of at war against, there's been an anti-meat movement for the last couple of decades. It's gotten really loud the last decade, especially through the 2010s and teens. But it's been happening for a long time. And I will say the anti-meat movement, whether it's PETA or veganism or the SPCA, like this anti-meat movement has done an amazing job at dehumanizing the farmers and ranchers, at just removing the face of these small families and just inserting the face of big corporation, and it's really bad. There is that, but what they don't tell you is that in the U.S. currently there are approximately 700,000 independent ranches.
Wow.
That is a mom, a dad, a couple kids, a family, a dog, usually a grandparent, multi-generational ranches that make up 20% of the world's beef supply. 700,000 independent ranches in the U.S. today, and you don't see their face. You don't know them, and they are dependent. The average herd size of those ranches is about 50. That's not that many. So it's imperative that they raise these animals to the best that they can raise them, so they can then turn around and sell them and make a little bit of profit to just survive. And I was visiting a ranch last April, and it was right into the spring. This was in Idaho, southern Idaho, and I was talking to the grandfather of the family, and he said, I've lived here for 70 years or so, 60 years, and he said this last winter was one of the harshest winters I've ever lived through. And he tells the story of they were expecting some calves to be born in February, and they kept going out and checking them throughout the day, and they just weren't born. They weren't born, and so they come in for the night. They go back out in the middle of the night, and they had been born. And their eyes were frozen shut. Their ears were frozen shut. Frostbite was starting to take in. They took these 3 calves and brought them into their living room and put blankets around them and put them in front of the fireplace, thinking that they were probably not going to make it through the night and wake up the next morning. And this is not a big house. I mean, this is, again, people watch Yellowstone and they think there's, ranchers. Most ranchers aren't rolling like that, I promise. And thinking they probably weren't even going to make it through the night, but they wake up the next morning and 3 little calves are running around their living room. And when I was there in April, they're much bigger now, and they're running around in the field. That's the kind of care that American ranchers, by and large, are putting into their animals. But again, the whole anti-meat movement has dehumanized them. They've erased them from existence, and they make you think that everything's a big corporation. Everything is, if you're buying meat, you're bad because you're supporting this big corporation. And there's a lot of families that are working 365 days a year. They don't get a day off to put food on our table.
Yeah. And particularly Good Ranchers you're personally visiting. Do you personally visit the ranches that you are buying from? Sounds like it's a very hands-on process.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what I love about Good Ranchers is, like you said, we are like a platform for these farms and ranches because they are really good at raising animals. That's what they're called to, they're gifting, and they're able to focus on that. And then Good Ranchers can come in, and we're like a co-op for them, and we're doing the marketing for them. We're doing the packaging and distribution for them, the selling side, so they can focus on what they're good at.
And helping tell their story, because these guys, they're great at raising meat. They and because that's just what they want to do. Yeah. But somebody's got to help be a voice for them, because when they haven't had a voice, and the country of origin labeling just gets stripped away silently in 2015, and the vast majority of Americans have no idea. People are starting to kind of hear about that, and because there's people like us that have been talking about it for years now. But I remember when we first started telling this story about 3 years ago, everyone's eyes would light up when they heard, "What do you mean there's no country of origin labeling law?" And I don't care personally if that meat's imported and sold in the U.S. That's fine. People have the right to be able to buy whatever they should be able to buy. If they want meat from New Zealand, if they want meat from Mexico, if they want meat from South America, Canada, it doesn't matter. They should be able to. They could buy that, but it should be labeled. Yeah. There shouldn't be this. The misleading of the label. They should have to say what country it's from, because I guarantee you, any of your listeners and 90% of Americans, if they go to the grocery store and says, "This was born, raised, and harvested in the United States," and this was born, raised, and harvested in anywhere else, they're usually going to pick up the born, raised, and harvested in the United States, because people still want to shop local. They want to support their community. They want to support their country.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the disruption of Good Ranchers in a good way in the market, is that right now, if you just go to that grocery store, you don't know. That's right. Even if it says product of the United States, you don't know if it was raised and harvested here in the United States. But with Good Ranchers, it's, you're supporting those 700,000 or, whatever number you're partnering with at any given year of those ranchers. And I just think too, from COVID hit, and I do want to hear your guys' perspective on COVID, because COVID hit and the grocery store lines started to stretch, and then there was shortages. I remember the ground beef shortage that hit everybody. I didn't know about Good Ranchers yet during COVID.
Yeah.
I've only, in the last year gotten familiar, but how did that affect you guys? And, what were kind of American ranchers doing during COVID?
Yeah, struggling. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Struggling. That's for sure. So when COVID happened in 2020, it really showed, man, it showed a lot of weaknesses in a lot of areas of our country. So food supply would be a big one. It showed, trauma, or I guess it's just trauma. What's another word for trauma? What I'm trying to say, like hard times.
Hard times.
There we go.
Yeah.
Hard times can expose the holes in the ship, and so COVID really exposed a lot of holes in a lot of different systems, but in our food supply for sure, because we were really quick, and the toilet paper supply.
Yes, that too.
How could I forget?
Yeah, but to know that at any point the stores could just run out of meat and run out of food. And I remember
formula. That was the other
run out of
shortage.
formula. Yeah, and we're stuck going, oh my gosh, what do we do? Fortunately, because we have direct access and direct supply, we never ran out, and which was a massive blessing to us and to our business, because there was a period of probably 6 weeks or so, I think March, April, May in that of 2020, this was before we were selling online. We were selling out of trucks across the U.S. We launched online early 2021, but we didn't run out of meat. We had access, and every single one of our trucks just had a line of people all day, every day, for about 6 weeks straight, and it was amazing to be able to. It was a sobering thought, honestly, to know that we're able to provide food to a lot of people that didn't have access to it. So
yeah, and not only that, we were able to help other small businesses, because I remember like restaurants calling us and restaurant suppliers calling us because they had all this meat, but the restaurants weren't open, and so they had no way of selling it, and they had nothing to, nowhere for it to go, and so we were able to offset that from them and distribute for them. So there was a lot of good that came from it, and
Yeah. On top of being able to bless, my background in being a pastor, still very connected with churches, and churches took a big hit during COVID because, but generally, even faithful church attenders, if they're not going to church, they usually don't. They stop giving. Just kind of how it happens, the nature of that. So churches were really kind of struggling. It's like especially small churches and church plants were really struggling to stay in business, and we were not able to. We were also in a financial place to be able to support and not just with food, but also with money as well. And I only say that to give credit and honor to God, because He said start a meat company. We had no idea why we were doing it, but we did, and we look up a few years later, and and I'm thankful. I'm so grateful that we listened, because we were in a position to be able to do a lot of good.
Yeah.
Okay, so no morning is complete without what? Coffee. And that's why I love 7 Weeks Coffee. 7weekscoffee.com is America's pro-life coffee company. It's gourmet, small batched, ethically sourced coffee that is delicious. You're going to love it. Every time you buy from 7weekscoffee.com, you're also giving 10% of your order, your money, directly to pregnancy resource centers that are helping moms and babies. So why bother buying from other brands you see on the grocery aisle store when you know that this brand, 7 Weeks Coffee, is not just delicious and amazing and gourmet, but it also is directly funding and fueling the pro-life movement. So go to 7weekscoffee.com today. You can make your order. Use the code Lila at checkout for 10% off your order and enjoy a delicious cup of coffee that is helping to also fuel the pro-life movement.
I think that's a really inspiring part of the story that I love is the entrepreneurial spirit that felt very, a calling. It was not just, I want to do this thing, but God's calling us as a family to do this thing that we don't have direct experience for, and we're going to just figure it out. And you said something earlier that it was not easy, but it wasn't ever really hard.
Yeah.
Can you explain more of that? I know a lot of people who listen to the show are interested in entrepreneurial things. We have a lot of moms who do, side hustles and people who are starting businesses. So what have you learned as small business now building a large business owners? Yeah. And what does that mean it wasn't hard?
Yeah. I feel like for us, that means if you're in God's will and you're praying and God's going to go before you and all of that, like, it's just going to feel right. You're not going to have all this pushback and things that you're fighting or just trying to figure out on your own. It's just going to naturally progress. And there might be times of, trouble or things happen that you're like, well, why did that happen? But I don't know. It's just been like an easy road. And as long as we're obedient to God and following what he's called us to do, it's just been like a very easy road.
Yeah. The right doors opened.
Yeah.
Again, COVID, for example, it opened so many doors for us because, and we were just, our story is we've just constantly been in the right place at the right time, and again, I think that's what, I'm reminded of how Saul was anointed to be king, and his father told him that there was a couple of lost donkeys, and his father said, "Go find the donkeys." And Saul would have definitely been, his family would have most likely been wealthy because they had servants and they had donkeys and they had all these animals, and it could have been very easily. We know that Saul was head and shoulders taller than everyone. He was the oldest of his brothers and of his family, and it would have been really easy for him to go, "I'm too good to go do that. I don't need to go. Like, I can just send the servants. I don't have to go find a couple donkeys." That's a very minuscule thing, but he did, and in doing that, he met Samuel. And the prophecy was to Samuel, a boy's going to come along looking for donkeys. That's the one you're going to anoint to be king. And the moral of that story is, so many people are looking for their call to be king, but they don't want to do the work of looking for the donkeys. And I believe that God moves and elevates and people who listen and do as he commands. And he usually doesn't he didn't command us start a meat company that's gonna be the fastest growing in the U.S. and is gonna do all these great things. Like, especially coming from being a pastor and being a worship pastor and being the guy who's, again, at a 15,000 member church. Like, I've led worship in multiple arenas with tens of thousands of people many times in my life, and every week I was up in front of thousands of people, and to remove from that platform, and there's nothing sexy about starting a meat company, like I mean, and but to follow God's voice and go, okay, because again, I thought that our call was going to be eventually to start a church. That's really what I thought we were going to do. Like
the meat company would be a way to help start this church.
Yes. Yeah. I thought, and the reason so back up a little bit, the reason I was praying, God, give me something else, because I wanted to plant a church, and I wanted to be able to plant a church. And I thought that, so I was praying, God, give me something that I can do to where I would, because when you plant a church, you have no money. And I thought, well, if I could at least do something to make some money, then I could I would be able to plant a church. And so God says, start a meat company. And going into it, we both fully thought, okay, well, this is the means to the end, especially when the first year was successful, we were profitable. We were like, hey, okay, we're going to do this for a year or two, and then we'll go start a church. But then we look up in 2020 and we realize, oh, this is what you called us to. And now going into year 6, and again, you don't know what you don't know. And having only been in ministry my entire life, like that's all I knew. But now I see a complete other side of ministry through business and being a Christian business owner, where we're able to provide quality jobs. Well, not even quality jobs, but a quality place to work for people to come every day and be able to provide an atmosphere that people enjoy coming to. Like that's a very rewarding thing in and of itself. But and able to, be able to give mothers. We had 4 babies born last year.
Yeah.
And
Actually, I think it was 5.
yeah.
And our employees, yeah.
Yeah. And to be able to give moms 3 months off, 6 months off, in a lot of cases, maternity leave. We give the dads, I think, 90 days paternity leave.
Yeah.
And we pay for half of everyone's daycare up to 6 or 7 years old. To be able to provide those things for families, those are the things we didn't even think of when we said, we heard say, start a meat company. And, those are all things completely on the other side of what we're doing to try to help American farms and ranches and know where your food is coming from and all these things. So there's a lot that encompasses. I feel like I just said a whole lot of things, but do you want to say anything about that?
You said a lot. No, that's great. I would say going back to like our side of it, like in office, it really is special. Because I remember the first few years I'd ask Ben, I'm like, okay, so when are we starting the church?
Yeah.
You're called to ministry. Like, when are we doing this? And then I just had this like epiphany moment one night, and I was like, oh, like this is our ministry.
Wow.
We started just in our living room. It was just us. And then now it's grown. We have like 50 employees now, and they're so amazing. We love them so much, and they just love coming into the office, and they're on mission. And, we have these people for 40 hours a week, and for them to like love coming to work, like I know that it's bettering us, but it's been bettering their lives too. So yeah.
What are some of the tools that you guys use as Christian business owners to guide your decision making? You mentioned prayer earlier. I mean, it was really prayer that inspired the whole company. It sounds like listening to God.
Yeah.
So yeah, how do you listen to God as a Christian business owner, and then how do you navigate? There's a lot of tough things in business.
It's getting harder and harder.
It is.
These days.
Yeah. I would say like anything that, big corporate America is doing, we are not doing, right? But no, it is. It's just like, what do these people need? And how can we provide that in a godly way? How can we be good Christian leaders for them? That's everything is through that filter. Every decision, every benefit. What else?
Yeah.
Foreseeing all of it.
Yeah. So we put family first.
Yeah.
We tell our employees regularly, they know this, that this job is not the most important thing in your life. Your family and your home is the most important thing in life. Mm-hmm. Your family comes first. This job comes second. Because at the end of the day, at some point, this job won't be At some point, this job won't be here, but your family will, and you have to prioritize your family. And we try our best to live by that, and to model that, but also to allow that for our employees as well. And we don't shy away from our faith. We don't shy away that we're Christian. I mean, we're not a Christian business. Like I don't know if it's legal to be that or not. I don't pay much attention to HR, but I still meet. I'm the final interview for every person, whether they're customer service or operations marketing, or it doesn't matter. I still sit down with every single person before they're hired. When their manager says, "I want to hire this person, I think they're great," then the final interview is with me. Sometimes it's with both of us, and we tell them, "Hey, you can believe anything you want and be here, but you have to know that we are Christians. We believe this is what we believe in, and there are times that we will talk about our faith. There are times that we will pray over the staff. There will times and we just put that right out in the open. And if that offends you, then this isn't going to be the place that you're gonna want to work. Again, you can believe anything you want to believe and work here. Just don't let our beliefs offend you or surprise you."
I think that's rare increasingly, to have a successful business that's growing, that is faith-based. But I think it's also the future. I know that is, basically any sponsor for the podcast, it's like, are you aligned on the values?
Right.
But pursuing excellence is just obviously a product that's going to be amazing. But it is the future, because otherwise, I think the people who rule business and who are, most influential in business, they make huge impact on culture. So it is a ministry what you guys are doing, 100%, both to serve families with great meat, but then also to be culture shapers in how you run the business.
Yeah. And another cool thing that we get to do with this business is support organizations like
There it
Action.
is. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. I've always looked up to you for so long. Like, I've just admired you and the work you're doing with your organization. It's so huge. So like you and, Ali Stuckey and all the other, pioneers out there, like, it's just really cool that we get to put our marketing spin behind things and people that are, aligning with our values. And that's what we believe too. So it's been awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any last words of encouragement or, for someone who's listening who feels there's a call on their life? Maybe it's a business that they feel inspired to start and they're kind of figuring out, should I take the plunge? Is this something I should do? Any advice for people that maybe feel a calling to do something, but it's daunting?
Yeah. I would say first and foremost, obviously prayer and seeking God, but also having like a really supportive community around you, friends, family, whatever that looks like, spouse. But as long as, you have support, the road will be a lot easier. But doing it solo, I feel like would be hard. So just, getting people alongside you that are supporting you and building you up is super important.
Yeah. My advice would be do it. Go.
Spoken like a true entrepreneur.
Just go. Because at the end of the day, you don't do anything to plan to fail. But if it doesn't work, then you're right back where you were. But if it does work, it far outweighs the what if it doesn't work. And you gotta go. You gotta take steps. You just have to do it. There's never a good time to have children.
Well, yeah, you had 4 kids in like 5 years while you're doing Good Ranchers.
Yeah.
Right. But there's your life is never perfectly aligned. Okay, well, now we're gonna have and they just bring chaos right into the mix. But the same thing is true. And again, for us, it was start a meat company. Okay, like we didn't take a bunch of time figuring out how we're gonna do it and do all these things. We just jumped in, and the same thing was true with even getting online, and which that's our business has just catapulted since being online, and because you can only sell so much out of the back of a truck in a parking lot, but even in that, it's a very hard space to get into, selling perishable items and mailing them and doing it well. But I remember this was in end of 2020, going to 2021, and we had been working for months trying to figure out the logistics of it. And finally, I told one of the employee who was working on trying to get that going, I said, just put me in a box and start shipping it. We'll figure it out. Because at some point, because it was like, well, we're going to be another week, we're going to be another 2 weeks, it's going to be another 2 months. We just kept running into that. And I said, and finally,
send it to me.
Right. I said, we just gotta start doing it, or we're gonna get left behind. And I think that the same thing is true with even starting. You just have to do your homework, do your research. I'm not like I hope to be a lifelong learner. And I read a quote one time that says, "Love like you'll die tomorrow, learn like you'll live forever." And so I believe in learning and reading and educating and continuing to do that. So do that stuff, but some things you have to just jump in and start doing it, and don't be afraid to fail.
Yeah.
What's the future of Good Ranchers?
Our 3.5-year-old daughter running the whole thing.
As a 16-year-old or something.
At some point, yeah.
She'll be CEO.
I know. She's Bossy.
It's awesome.
She's no. The future is to continue doing what we're doing. We're we know we're on mission. And by the way, our mission is to bring people to the table, and a lot of great things happen around a table. The Last Supper happened around a table, and we believe that food brings people together. We believe that food, it's a fundamental human need. You need air, you need water, you need food, but beyond that, you also need community. And COVID really taught us that we need each other. We need community, and that's what communion is. Jesus said, "This do in remembrance of me." When you take the bread, when you drink the wine, remember me. And we've really we've really traditionalized communion, but the reality of what Jesus was saying was, come around the table, eat food, drink wine, but let me be the center. Make sure that I'm the center. This is my body. This is my blood. And everything that you do when you have communion together, when you have community together, remember my sacrifice. Remember me. And so we wholeheartedly know that food brings people together, and we want to provide quality food for people. Honestly, we don't even want them to really think about Good Ranchers. We want them to just have access to good food when they get home, to make dinner and be able to get around the table and have communion with their friends and their family.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for putting your faith to the test and just going out and doing it. And we enjoy it at our family table. And I know a lot of our listeners do too. And we're grateful to work with you guys. It's been awesome.
Yeah.
Keep it up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Lila Rose Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe. If you are listening to this on YouTube and you're not already subscribed, please do. And don't forget to ring that notification bell. Also, if you're listening on podcast or Apple, don't forget to leave us a review. That helps the podcast reach more people. And we have a locals community now, locals.com. The link is in the bio. This is where you can get special updates, direct information about the show, sneak peeks behind the scenes about what we're working on. Check it out today at the link in the bio, and we'll see you next time.